USA Triathlon launched the Safe to Return to Multisport initiative, and I wonder if you might be able to discuss that and how were you looking to USAT to step forward and lead here, and what can athletes expect, race directors and coaches expect, and what responsibility do we have to usher in the return to multisport?
Yeah, so for our sport in particular, we went through about 6 or 7 years of either flat or declines in participation. And so when I talked to you a few years ago, my focus was on getting the sport to grow again, if you remember, and trying to come up with new ideas and really bring the triathlon community together, multi-sport community together, to do that. And we actually saw a growth for the first time in 7 years, the last year and the last 18 months. And then obviously, March 11th hit or so, right around when we all in the sports industry decided that this was a bigger impact than something small that was only going to last a few months. And so many of us, the NBA started it, and we, within a day, canceled our World Cup event that was going to be hosted in Florida a week and a half later. And from then, it's just been, for us, trying to help the sport through this. And luckily, we were a little bit ahead of it. We formed an internal working group, COVID-19 working group, in early February. My wife pays close attention to international news, and she was, luckily I have her there to warn me along the way, to say, look, this is not, something that's going to be contained. You better be prepared. So we started preparing at USA Triathlon really before most sports organizations, it was even on their radar. So I really think that helped us get out in front of it and be more proactive than reactive. And one of the first things that we saw a need for was a cohesive strategy for endurance sport overall. And so we joined this group called the Endurance Sports Coalition. We were one of the founding, I think, 6 or 7 groups to be a part of this, to really create alignment in endurance sport overall. Because, Tony, if you know me and anyone who knows me personally, I just believe in collaboration, and that I'm a big competitor. I'm a very competitive person, but not when it comes to something as that I care about, which is people's health and fitness, and people getting out and participating and exercising. I just feel like the more people that sweat, the more people that cross finish lines. I don't care if it's a Tough Mudder or an Ironman or what. It doesn't matter to me as long as people are moving. That's my motivation. And so we saw a real need in our sport to put some guidelines and recommendations together. With pools being closed, with races being canceled, we did not want it to be handled with kind of similar to the way our federal government did, where they wanted it to be handled on such a local basis to where they didn't really come out with anything.
Right.
So we decided that we wanted to come up with some standards and expectations and guidelines and recommendations, working with coaches, clubs, race directors, athletes, to develop those and really creating some national standards and guidelines. And we feel like what it did was really a few things. It gave athletes at least some semblance of hope that when racing comes back, that it can be conducted in a safe way. It also gave race directors a roadmap, and we wanted them, while we wanted national standards, we did want them to customize it based on the needs of their local community. And so they were able to start putting their plans together, which, there has been, probably 40 or 50 triathlons in the last couple weeks across the country, in places where it's, like Alaska and other places where they're not dealing with it as intensely as we are in certain states, and really across America. So we were able to do that for our race directors, and that was really helpful. We also saw that with athletes not being able to train in pools, that we needed to create some videos and training plans for them to be able to train indoors, safely. So if races do come back, that they would, have less of a learning curve or time to get pool ready. We knew most could bike and run, but we were really concerned about the swim. So we did 25 free training plans for our members, all distances. We did 18 different videos with our elite athletes and corporate partners. And our whole goal was not to push people to bring the sport back prematurely, It was to show that we had plans together that would allow them athletes to safely train and race directors to safely conduct races at the appropriate time. Mm-hmm. And so, what it did for our community was give them hope that there's a plan, that there's a group that's working on bringing races back, and whether there's some sort of medication on the back end that helps you feel better when you have this terrible disease and virus, or if you get a vaccine that prevents it in the first place. I think that we want to make sure that we have standards out there that we know that we can stand behind and help support our local race directors. There are still significant risk for athletes, and no matter what we do, like there is with anything, it really is up to the athletes, like it is for anyone. If you go to the grocery store and you're not wearing a mask, I mean, you're taking a risk and you're risking everyone around you. Mm-hmm. And so we know there's inherent risk in competing. I'm actually doing 2 endurance events in August, and I've said this a lot to my friends and others, like I'm willing to take that risk. That's me. It's not something that I'm pushing on anyone else. My wife, she's an endurance athlete too. She would absolutely not do a race right now. Zero chance. And that's her philosophy and approach, and I support that as well. So we're all just so different, but I do think the athlete really needs to pay attention, look at our protocols if they're going to race. Make sure the race director make sure the race is sanctioned, because then at least they have to live up to our sanctioning standards and expectations and guidelines. Mm-hmm. And reach out to us if they need help along the way, if they have questions. What we found is the race directors who are now conducting these races are conducting the safest races that have ever existed in our sport, like ever, from day one, right?
Yeah.
And so they're doing everything they can, but it's still not perfectly safe, and everyone should know that going in.
Right. Yeah, and in talking to many of our athletes, they sort of look to me and ask, Coach, what should I do? And just like you said, I can't make that decision for you. I mean, everyone has their level of risk aversion, and if you're in for Ironman Arizona and you're trying to figure out whether or not you're going to do it, that's you got to assess your level of risk aversion. And, I'm here to help you figure out how to train, given that you can't go to facilities. I can help them do that. But ultimately, you're going to need to make the decision whether you have kids at home, whether you have parents that you're going to be in contact with. And, that's how I look at the coach's responsibility of it. I wonder if you agree.
I totally agree with that. And I think that it's not appropriate, I don't think, for anyone to push anyone else into something as important as their health. When I look at where we as a sport are right now, I do think that we're fairly lucky in America that we have non-draft legal triathlon. Mm-hmm. I was on a call this morning. I'm actually the national governing body representative for the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee's COVID-19 working group, and we have calls every morning. And Dr. Finoff, the chief medical officer of the USOPC, this morning said there's been almost 0 cases of people contracting the virus outdoors. So for us, It's not about racing or training. It's about traveling there. It's about staying in hotels. It's about going to restaurants. It's about taking the virus with you to a community that might not be impacted. So if you're just showing up to a race, it's pretty darn safe. Mm-hmm. It's all the stuff around it that concerns me, right? We can't control that. And so that's why it's such a personal decision for everyone. If I'm the races I'm doing are, within driving distance, so I'm going to wake up and go do them and come home, just like I would a training, ride or anything like that. And so I do think that you're taking the exact right approach, and that what we've seen with our coaches and really clubs that have had a lot of success over the last 3 or 4 months, it's those that lead with the heart instead of the wallet, right? It's like they're looking out for each individual's best interest, giving them guidance and support, but they're not telling them what to do. It was something like this. It's again, as you just mentioned, it's a personal decision, and what we have to do is give facts and let them know whatever decision that they make, that we're going to do everything we can to make sure they're safe.